Hi, Donna. Good to see you. I saw David flick through briefly. Is Councillor Radman on the call?
I don't see her on yet, Chair Sullivan.
Thanks. Well, it is 3:45. We have Councillor Hickey, we have Mayor Reardon, we have me, so we have quorum. I know we already have regrets from Councillor Radman, right on time. Well done. Councillor Norton sends their regrets, so let's get started. It's 3:45. I will call today's meeting of the St. John Council Finance Committee to order. I can push a few more buttons here. Only to find that my token has expired. And we're off. So I called it to order. First item is item 2.1, which is the minutes of April 26th. Can I have somebody move the minutes of April 26th? Councillor Hickey and the mayor. All in favor, aye, or raise your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. We've got a full program this afternoon. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, Councillor Radman and the mayor? All in favor, signify aye, raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Disclosures of conflict of interest, if any? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. There's 2 items on the consent agenda. Councillor Hickey, are you moving the agenda? Okay. We'll take a seconder and then we'll get to Councillor Radman's question. Okay, the mayor seconded. Councillor Radman, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I just really had a bit of a question about whether or not we should be making the amendments that are in there. The reason why is I'm not sure whether or not we should even have somebody appointed to FCM. Why? It's because of their way that they're, and I just realized this time around when I went, the way that the governance structure is set up is so that the UMNB, the Francophone Group, and 8 cities executive directors are the ones that are actually going and sitting on boards. So I'm wondering how much leverage our appointed person even has there. So anyway, just food for thought. I mean, it's definitely the conference that a lot of people want to go to because there's so much information given. I just question whether or not we even need somebody designated to be the rep. So anyway, I don't know. I just kind of feel like there's not a whole lot of leverage that one person has. We're not even members of UMNB. So it might be more valuable to even become members of UMNB so that we have a say there. Anyway, so I don't know if any of staff have any information on that whole governance structure and whether or not we should even have somebody there as a rep. I don't know. I know it's something we've always done as a city, but is there any leverage there for us from a governance perspective?
Thanks, Councillor Radman. You bring up a good point, actually. I was having,
Last year, yeah, I'm sorry. Last year when I went, I didn't realize this, and then I sat in on just to kind of be a fly in the wall for the voting. And I thought this is a really weird way that they've kind of structured this for the board. And I think, there's some great representatives that I think are speaking even on our interests on behalf of us, even though we're not even members of UMNB. And we were invited to their gathering and everything that they put on. But anyway, I have a bit of concern. I don't know if we have any leverage there. I would love for us to, but.
yeah, I guess from my mind, and this is less of a finance committee conversation and probably more of a council conversation. But I think we need to get a hold for ourselves of why do we go to FCM? Like, are we going, because FCM is kind of two things, one side of it is fantastic professional learning for counselors. And then the other side of it is the advocacy for policy. And I guess my own view would be the advocacy for policy. I don't think we have a lot of strength just as individual counselors going there. I think the strength is through the associations locally and influencing, the provincial associations to take those policies forward. However, I think the professional learning is really good. So, I'll just plant this seed, and I don't think it's something we as a finance committee need to resolve. Is that perhaps maybe we don't call them reps, but maybe we just determine whose turn it is to go so that everybody has the opportunity to get the professional learning. I have no problem actually with the policy of whoever the designated people are. If we choose 2 people a year, we should fund their trip to FCM without them going in the hole on the professional learning if there's other professional learning they want to do. But maybe we suggest to council to have a fuller conversation on it with regards to changing who those reps are every year so that, should councillors want to take part, that everybody has an opportunity to go over the mandate. If we rotate it through so everybody gets an opportunity, every year of the mandate, this year happened to be a 5-year mandate, everybody could have had an opportunity to be those reps. But, point taken. I think the policy of funding the 2 people who go, though, I'm fine with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, but we all have a budget for professional development now. So that's something that we have changed this year. So I almost wonder if that should be changed. The other thing is, I'll be honest with you, I probably would be voting against this one. And the reason why is I think that everything needs a budget line item, and I don't see that there's any limit for this. So there needs to be a limit. Like the hotels that you could have booked in Toronto this year could have been over $900 a night. So there absolutely has to be a limit, even if it is for that person going to the FCM. You have to have a limit to everything. The CAO's office needs a limit for a budget item. So, and I know that it might have to stick within the council budget still. However, there should be a limit for everybody, right? So for everything, whether it be ticket purchase or, the mayor's office has her budget, right? So anyway, I just don't see I don't see a restriction on it, and there needs to be. So I think that I probably need to pull it to vote differently on this one too.
Yeah, no, that fair question. CFO Fudge, do you have any comments on limits in the professional development and with regards to those comments?
Yeah, no, all very good comments. First of all, if as you indicated, Chair, if council decides that there isn't going to be council appointed members to FCM, then it makes this amendment moot. It will pretty much have zero application because it's only exempting those formally appointed by council. The policy is meant to address the annual conference to FCM, so it's a once per year, the annual conference, and there's other guidelines within the the council policy for conferences and travel, our normal travel policy. There's guidelines there to make sure that we're monitoring expenses and they're reasonable. And of course, as Councillor Radwan indicated, they need to be within budgeted parameters as well. So there are other controls in place. But certainly, I think I would agree with the comment that the bigger issue is the FCM conference and the appointment to that conference, and it's probably more appropriate for a council conversation than a finance committee one.
So can I suggest, with committee's permission, maybe we pull this one and table it and suggest to council that council have that fuller discussion, and then if we need to come back to it. Does that make sense? Councillor Hickey.
Thanks very much, Chair Sullivan. My suggestion, I really like the way Fredericton does FCM. They have 2 spots open for councillors, and the mayor is guaranteed a spot, and it rotates accordingly. I would suggest, like, is it a nominating committee conversation that needs to have, like, I would appreciate more strategy in who goes to FCM when. And I would like to see, like, we've referenced the idea of rotations, but have never done anything formal about it. I would like to see that happen, just so that, we're not dropping, $30,000 a year sending people to FCM alone, right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Look, I wonder if it's appropriate for nominating. I don't know.
I think it would eventually end up with nominating, but I think the recommendation in how we do it, like, because the current appointees are appointed by council, so I guess a recommendation would need to come from somewhere for council to address, and then send it to nominating to recommend who those people would be. So perhaps a motion that could come out of this would be a recommendation. Unless there's somebody with a different opinion here, I'm kind of hearing consensus that a recommendation to council that at least a strategic discussion on how the representatives are chosen for FCM be had, with the possibility of rotating the positions. Does that make sense? Councillor Radwan, you kind of started this discussion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, sure, I do wonder how much leverage there is for them with FCM. Is there any ability that they have to vote on anything? And then finally, since we have that professional development policy, and we have a budget for it now, I'm wondering if it does need to be separate. If it is, there does, for me, need to be a limit there. Is it $3,000? Is it $3,500? Next year it's in Calgary. So I'm kind of thinking ahead. So it could be very expensive again. There does need to be a limit there. So that's where I kind of sit with that. And I do wonder if is there any ability for that rep to have any influence or not? And if not, then do we even need the rep? I don't think that we do. If they don't have any influence that I'm not aware of. And then finally, we have this professional development policy and a budget attached to it now for this reason. We could all use that pocket of money if we want to. And if we want to use it for FCM, we could do it. So anyway, that's kind of where I sit with it. I'd like to see, maybe strategically, is there a way for us to influence voting at FCM? That's an important discussion, I think, for us to have. UMNB is a huge influence there. Should we be members of UMNB? Do we need to have that conversation? And then thirdly, if this is going to be part of policy, there needs to be a limit on it.
Okay. Your worship, you haven't had a dive into this one yet, but
I guess what I'd say is I think it is strategic to have a rep there. Absolutely have a presence. You're a member. That rep, we all get the FCM information. That rep should be dialoguing with FCM or doing whatever with FCM. And the networking is important there. The professional development is important there. I think if you're going to be a member of FCM, and we are, that you should absolutely have a presence there. That's one thing. So I would recommend that we still have a rep. You have 2 reps right now. You have the deputy as your rep, and Brent Harris as your rep. Those are the two reps that we've appointed to FCM. We did it at the beginning of the year when we went around and asked everyone what would be their preference for committees, et cetera, to be on. So that's that. And then the other one is when I've read through, let's see here, council professional development policy. It says, item 1.6 says a councillor who is funded by council budget to attend a conference, seminar, forum, delegation, or similar event shall participate as a rep of council and not as an individual. When I was at FCM, they drew 29 gifts that people were, taking home for different things. So I guess my question is, if I'm there as a rep of council, who does that giant box of outdoor lighting belong to at the end of the day? So I think we need to have that discussion as well. A lot of their gifts at FCM I found were more geared to the municipality anyway. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on some of this. But I do think it's important to have a rep there. And the other question I would have is, should the city then, in that case, be booking all of the accommodations if we're concerned about a variable in accommodations? Maybe it all needs to go through the city. I don't mind walking 10 or 15 minutes to get to the conference. I don't need to be at the conference site. Anyways, thank you.
Councillor Hickey, and then over to the CAO.
Chair, I know Brent's had his light on for a while. I don't know if you want to bump to him first. I don't mind going second. Oh, I was shaking his head. Never mind. Just quickly, I guess what I'd like to see from this is an assumption on FCM that says we're going to send 2 reps every year. We can either rotate them or have a conversation about them to make sure that there's some flexibility so that more people can get through that, but have a pretty significant structure at 2 people, including the mayor, a year. We book the hotel rooms now. We know that 3 people are going. We book them now. We make sure that there's savings included. There's savings included there. There's rotation amongst it. We're able to control the costs a bit better. That's really what I'd like to see out of it. That seems to be, based on my experience this weekend, what's the best practice amongst other municipalities. And I do have a question about 5.2, but I can wait until we're done this conversation.
Yeah, I think we'll finish 5.1 and then we'll get into 5.2. Mr. McGovern, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So a lot of good discussion here, a lot of ground covered. As the mayor has mentioned, council has voted that for the term of council, 2 reps would be identified. So, and as mentioned, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Harris. So this was structured under that premise, but I think it also applies to if there's a rotating of seats that occur, because really what we're trying to do is be fair and equitable, that if as an organization we're requiring the reps to attend FCM and represent the city, that they still have access to their budget. They're essentially $3,000 that's allocated to them. We didn't put a ceiling on it because it can fluctuate, depending upon, whether it's in Halifax or Vancouver, it can fluctuate. And so we simply expect that choices would be made that would be reasonable, and then within the overall council budget, it needs to be managed under that council budget. So I think this applies to either the existing framework of the current 2 appointed candidates or reps, but it can also apply, as Councillor Hickey has just mentioned, if we have 2 reps that are rotating. It just simply gives budget ability and flexibility to those 2 reps who are representing the city.
Okay, thank you, CEO. Well, how about we deal with these separately then? Because for me, I've had enough conversation. 5.1 couldn't officially be on the consent agenda if we have a dissenter or do anything, I think, different with it. So how about we wrap up 5.1? If somebody would like to suggest a motion to deal with it, we'll deal with it. I think part 2 is we make a referral back to council to discuss how the delegates are chosen for FCM, but that's a second piece. Anybody want to take a stab?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Chair. I don't know. Like, I'm fine with that. I don't know if you guys want to table it or for further discussion or.
Well, I guess I would just suggest where's the best spot do we think it is to go?
Yeah.
Does it go to nominating right away? Does it go to council?
I think what we've got in front of us is the money part of it. So that's still us. But just a referral back to council to talk about kind of the bigger picture of representation, if that makes sense. So after the CAO's explanation, I'm comfortable with the policy. I believe that if we choose 2 people to go, again, it could be Halifax or Vancouver. I think we've got enough policies in the rest of our policies to make sure they're, not staying at the most expensive hotels and flying first class and all of those things. I think we've got those controls in place to make sure that it's reasonable. For me, I think the professional learning is fantastic and the networking is amazing. So I think everybody should have an opportunity to go over their mandate, and I think that strengthens council as a whole if everybody has an opportunity to go. So I think mostly I'm fine with the finance end of the policy that we have in us. I think we've got some discussion to do with council.
Then
I would
I vote
recommend-
staff recommendation.
Up and
then.
away.
I would
Sorry,
second that. And that we refer it on to maybe the council to rotate it or discuss how it will be applied to council, I guess, to councillors. The CFO has his light on, he might have some better idea.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, I mean, the good news we have in the position we have is we have a current policy. We're not void of policy. This is an amendment to a policy. So we have structure, we have parameters. So one thing you could do is just table this policy, because the extraneous issues is how you're going to deal with FCM. You could table this policy such that when you've dealt with the other issue of how you want to equitably deal with appointment to FCM, we can at least the items tabled, we can bring it back to the finance committee and make the appropriate adjustment thereafter. So you could take that approach as well. I offer that as one suggestion.
I'm comfortable moving it or seconding it, the policy to go forward, and then we'll figure out how we're just going to apply it to council.
Okay, so the mayor has made a motion to move the policy forward. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Hickey. Any more discussion on that motion? All in favor, aye, or raise your hand. Contrary minded? Councillor Radwin is an A. The motion is carried. Do we want to officially make a referral that council look at the selection process for reps at FCM, or Mayor Reardon, do you just take that back?
No, I'm happy to make a referral that it goes back to council to apply what we have put in place for funding, so that there is equity around the table for opportunities to go to FCM. I don't know, something along those lines.
Okay, well, council will figure at the end. Do I have a seconder on that?
Chair, the only thing I would add to that is just maybe if ahead of that, staff could just either get Fredericton or Moncton's policy for it, just so we can have a reference.
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Sure, we'll do that.
Okay, super. So any more discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye. Raise your hand. Contrary minded? Carried. Good. I don't want off the consent agenda. 5.2. Are there any questions around 5.2? Councillor Hickey, I think you had mentioned you had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
I do, Chair, if I can. I just want. I just wonder if staff can offer any insight as to kind of what we're spending now from a ticket purchasing standpoint. I guess my only concern is, like, I know I spend more than $1,000 a year on tickets, and it's not because I love rubber chicken dinners. It's because I genuinely enjoy going to these community events, and I know a lot of folks do as well. But that's my concern, that it's not quite going to get us there. And we also use these purchase requests to support community groups that we don't always support. So I worry that if it's limited to that number. So I just wonder if there's any context we could provide as kind of what we're spending now, how there's flexibility, because certainly more use funds than others. If someone could provide any context.
Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Staff, CFO, or city clerk, could you add a little to that?
Yes, Chair. So currently, what we did with this one is there's a $10,000 a year budget for all of council, and we simply divided that by the number of councillors. Year to year, I don't have the last year's expenditure, but we always are within budget year to year. So the policy does have an exemption similar to the council professional development policy, whereby if a council member thought they were going over, they would seek permission of council. So it wouldn't be all that different than currently. So currently, every ticket purchase goes to council. So if council were to adopt this amendment, you would only need to go to council if you were to go above your $1,000 limit. I hope that provides a little more context.
I guess it does to an extent, John. I just my only concern with going to individual folks is that it just, like, there are some of us that go to all of them, and then there are some of us that go to 2 or 3, right? So, like, I know I'm going to be at council asking for more, because I go to a lot of them, and I know a lot of us around this table go to a lot of them too. And it's not, like I said, it's not self-serving to a point that I love a half frozen chicken, but we love going to community events. That's my only concern. I don't know if anyone else shares that.
Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Your worship, over to you.
Thanks. I had the same, I guess, concerns, because I tend to go to a lot of things because I feel that it's part of the job. And so I tend to be at things quite a bit. And there are some things like hospice, I think it's 150. The Red Triangle was 135. So Ed doesn't usually come with me because he's usually working, but there is that opportunity to bring someone, along too. So it wouldn't take long for your money to get used up. So I thought about that. And then John, you've clarified a bit of that by saying we're never over our budget. So maybe it will work out at the end of the day. It's just hard to come to council. I guess we'd have to make sure we get it on the agenda to make sure that we can get to some of these things. And you don't always have the time with an every 2-week council to make sure that the events are on there. Anyways, it was a concern I had as well. And then, as I said, which was in 5.1, the other concern I have is sometimes there are prizes that are given out, and who owns the prize with the ticket? That's it.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think, and City Clerk, you can clarify. I think the mayor's office is separate from this policy. Yeah, thanks for the nod. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. So I kind of do lean in with Councillor Hickey, because I go to a lot of things too. And I'll be honest, I think that my schedule allows me to go to more things than some of my colleagues are able to go to. And so some of my colleagues are not able to get to some things that they probably love to go to because of their schedules. And that's totally fine. But sometimes I will call Kateri, for example, in the mayor's office and say, is anybody going to that event? And if she tells me no, I'll juggle things around to make sure that I go so that somebody is there from council. and I feel like I am going to maybe more things than sometimes my schedule allows me to, but I just want somebody to be there. And if I had a Monday to Friday day job, it would be really hard for me to do that. So since I don't, I try to kind of compensate. So I have a feeling I'm going to be one of these people too. And I hope I won't be treated badly if I'm asking to go over my budget, if that's what it is, because I'm just trying to make sure that somebody's at events sometimes. And if somebody else was going, sometimes I just don't go, and I never get a second ticket. I just go by myself. But anyway, I'm a little bit worried because I have a feeling that, I'm going to be in the public eye of looking for more money when really I'm just trying to make sure there's council presence.
Thank
For
you.
that.
Here's my 2 cents before CAO McGovern jumps in. We don't go over budget. So at the end of the day, from a budget perspective, we don't go over budget as a whole. But I do think we need some policy around it. I worry. I don't go to many. I pick and choose which ones I go to make sure I support. Kind of like Councillor Hickey. It's less so getting the dinner and more directing some support to particular organizations that I feel for. I agree with the mayor that I think it is good to have representation. Somebody from council is at these events. I do like in the policy though, where it very specifically says that if council funds are being used for you to go, you are there as a member of council. With respect, you're not there to work on your own brand. You're not there on a holiday. That's part of your job as a councillor, to be there to represent the city, to make connections to better the city, to show support of the city. And I think that's a real important piece that's in this document. I'm not worried on the whole as we put something in, because what it will do is it'll institute more tracking so that a year from now, the clerk's office will have the data to say, okay, here's the top end, here's the bottom end. Do we need to adjust the policy a little bit to make sure that, somebody is representing? And
I lost your audio there, Chair Sullivan.
So did I.
how about now?
Great.
We're certainly saving money on technology. My city computer crapped out, so I went to my city phone, and it's what dropped me last. So we'll see how long this piece lasts. And I don't know where you lost me or I lost you, but I do have a concern if councillors book tickets for events and then the representation doesn't show up, because that makes us look worse than I think if we didn't buy the ticket. So I think we do need some rigor around it so that, councillors don't make it a habit of every time there's an opportunity, we'll get a ticket. And if we can make it, we make it. I don't know for sure if that's happening, but I do know there are some times, and I don't go to many, but people have said, yes, Councillor so-and-so is going to be here. And then for whatever reason, they don't make it. And, that I think we need to have representation. And if somebody's going and can't make it, do they put an email out to council, say, look, I was going to go represent this. I can't make it. Can somebody please go in my stead? And I think if we have a policy, we start talking about it to bring some rigor. So, contrary to the last policy where we have a policy and we're looking at tweaking it, we don't have one here to tweak. So I think the nuts and bolts of this one are good. As we use it in a year? Are we going to make some changes to it? Likely, because, until you start actually implementing a new policy like this, you don't know where the gaps are. So I'm fine with it. I can tell you, for those who go and represent us well at dinners, we normally in council at the end say, yes, put the word out and we'll send the tickets. I don't see that being an issue at the end. I just see us starting to put a little bit of rigor and control around it, which I have no problem with. CEO McGovern.
Thank you once again. And I appreciate the dialogue and the feedback, because we're definitely, I'm making note of it. In terms of, where we're coming from with this, maybe just to give some context, it was around, striving for fairness and equity across the board. Also, with the allocation. In addition, it was also about administrative efficiency. And so not having to go to every council meeting with a council report for a ticket purchase, but instead having a budget allocated where that can be streamlined and it doesn't have to be part of the formal agenda every 2 weeks. Instead, you can simply work with the clerk to engage on the purchase of tickets for the event. And so it would be really by exception that you would be going to council as opposed to as we are now. It's every meeting or every second meeting where there's a ticket purchase on the agenda. So that's the basis at which we, came forward with this.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. That makes some sense. I do have a question, and I think the mayor brought it up, and we didn't get it addressed, and I'm not sure who would have more insight on this, but it is a good question. If we go to an event paid for by the taxpayers representing council, now at most of these events there's 50-50 draws and other draws and things, and as individuals we choose to buy tickets out of our own pocket, and win or lose, that's on us. But some events have fairly significant, sometimes door prizes. How does that work if a member of council has a ticket to a dinner and wins a trip around the world or something? Councillor Hickey?
My suggestion, Chair, would be standard protocol should be to give them back.
Now, yeah, I don't entirely disagree, but I don't think we have a policy on that.
Yeah.
I know there's some different levels of, I don't know if levels of government. I've read somewhere just about the level of gift that one can accept. And there's before it becomes a problem. Like if it's under a certain amount. If somebody goes home with a plant off the table, it doesn't bother me. But if you know what I mean, go ahead, Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, I could just offer some federal perspective, perhaps. Limits $200, but we take none, zero. I would suggest it should be the same for us. I would also suggest it should be implicit, but perhaps not. Perhaps it does need a policy. I had hoped we might not need one, but.
Yep. Any other thoughts on that? City Clerk, you brought this forward, or CFO Fudge, either of you find the ability to work something that in as we go forward with this?
Chair, my only suggestion would be that would most likely be a separate policy on gifts, not necessarily tied in with this particular policy, okay. But we can take that away and discuss it with the CAO and see what would be most appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Redmond, go ahead.
Just food for thought. I went to a chamber mixer one night and my business purchases membership for chamber. but most of the time I get pulled into city business conversations. Okay, so whether I'm going there business or not, I'm talking about the city of St. John. So when I won, which is the first time I won in like 11 years, a gift basket, I said, you know what? I don't think it's a good look. So I said, you know what? Is there a new business in the room? And I handed it over to them. Said, thank you for
Great
investing
idea.
in the city of St. John. So anyway, just food for thought. I just didn't think it was a great look. So, and I was grateful, yet didn't think that I should take it. So
That's a great perspective. Thank you, Councillor Redmond. General Counsel, I think I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. There are provisions in the LGA that address gifts, and there's also provisions in the code. And they are geared toward your inability to accept gifts to influence your decision making, or for your own personal gain because of your office. So we could have a discussion in more detail around that if that would be helpful for members of council.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we had, I don't know if this bodes well. This consent agenda conversation's been 40 minutes, but anyway, good conversation. As I see it, we got two pieces. We got the policy itself in front of us, and then I think staff is going to take it away anyway. I don't think we need anything for them. I think they can take away that we've got some thoughts about gifts that we would like to see a little bit of work done. So with regards to the policy itself,
I'll move 5.2.
thank you, Mayor. When anybody seconded, Councillor Hickey. Any more discussion on 5.2? No. All in favor, aye. Raise your hand. Don't reminded, carried. Performance management. Item 6.1. And item 6.1, I will introduce Stephanie Rackley Roach, who's joining the Finance Committee today. Stephanie, over to you. You're on mute. I know the feeling.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair, for that, and thanks to the committee tonight. We're pretty excited to show you what will be launched later in June. Our corporate performance dashboard. Previously at Finance Committee, we did present the KPIs, the corporate ones that were related to Council's priorities. We've gone through the process of building using internal resources and internal tools for a very interactive approach to communicating those KPIs out to the public, and what the next steps are to be building additional measures, both internally and related to the strategic plan, and how we actually use that data to make decisions about improving service delivery and performance. Tonight, the presentation will be provided by Ms. Evelyn Hatfield. She is our Manager of Corporate Planning, so I will turn it over to Evelyn for a presentation and a demonstration of the platform. Just going to share my screen.
So thank you for the introduction, Stephanie, and good afternoon, Chairman Sullivan and members of the Finance Committee. Today, I will provide a preview of the Council Priorities KPI dashboard. The dashboard was developed based on the KPIs established through workshops facilitated by Ernst & Young with senior leadership and as presented to this committee in Q4 of 2022.
Evelyn, your screen's not sharing. Sorry.
Oh, it's not?
No. There you go. We can see it in. Yes.
Okay. You didn't miss anything. So, additionally, a brief update on performance management next steps will be provided. Just a few notes before previewing the dashboard. Our existing investment in the Esri platform was leveraged using the Esri Performance Management Solution and built internally by the city's GIS team, led by Yves Legier, who is joining us on the call, and team members Andrew Pollock and Monique Morin-Sauertag. An internal build not only made good financial sense, but established real-time modifications, which allowed for our teams to collaborate without waiting for third-party intervention. Also joining the meeting are corporate performance team members Mark O'Hearn and Gordon Jennings, who contributed significant research, design, and content development efforts for the dashboard. As part of the research, we looked at other municipalities that use the Esri Performance Management Solution, such as Maple Ridge, Fredericton, and Brampton. We were able to have some dialogue with Fredericton and Brampton, and the team preferred the clean look of Brampton, and it offered us some inspiration for our design. In Q1 of this year, service areas, namely growth and community planning, community services, parks and recreation, energy management, customer service, public works, communications, finance, and hopefully not forgetting anyone, were consulted with engagement and support to reaffirm existing key performance measures, request data, and dashboard content. This was a corporate initiative with a strong cross-organizational investment, and we thank everyone who contributed. So the dashboard highlights each of Council's priorities with one or more KPIs indicating the target, status, and trend, along with more information on why the measure is important and the progress being made. So I'm just going to launch the dashboard for you. Can you see that okay, Stephanie?
Yep, it looks great.
So when the site is made public, there will be a link on the homepage of the city's website to get to the dashboard. And once you arrive at the dashboard, you will notice the navigation buttons at the top to get back to the city's homepage, back to this main page, links to mobile versions that we'll speak to later. And you can see also we have links to the city's social media sites. The priorities are highlighted here. And if I click on Explore, I can take you to one of the priorities. So where we're at the Finance Committee, I'm going to click on Perform. So I'm going to walk through one just for an example. So if I click to this button here at the top, I can expand to get a full page view of the KPI. Here I can see the current status, that it's on track, what the target is. I can click trend, and we can see that this KPI is trending in the right direction. If I click over here, I could download the data. Just below here, I can see the legend. So we're, green is meeting the target, blue is on track, and orange is needing improvement. If I click more information, which provides some context for the KPI, I can learn why it is important to measure, how it's being measured, and what progress is being made. Whenever possible, there will be links to other supporting information or plans on the website. This button allows me to share this page with someone quickly. Just going to jump back to the presentation. So for next steps for the dashboard, they include translation, development of French web in both English and French mobile versions, with a soft launch plan for Q3. In respect to performance management, the next steps are to align performance with the 10-year strategic plan. The first step occurring in June is to develop the strategic plan vision, mission, goals, and objectives into an organizational strategy results map. This result map provides service areas with the foundation to measure what matters across the organization. Throughout Q3 and Q4, measures teams will be formed to develop measures for the strategic plan objectives. And this concludes the update. Thank you for your time.
That is so cool. Committee, do you have any questions? Perhaps if you stop sharing your screen and
Yes.
there we go. And Councillor Hickey, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. I appreciate the presentation, Evelyn. Super cool, really exciting, and certainly worth all of the anticipation we've had around it. Who will maintain once it's created? How does the information get maintained throughout that?
For the council ones, a lot of them are annual. So it will more likely be just us working with GIS to make sure they're updated on the annual basis. Some of them are quarterly. But when we get into the measures teams with the departments, we will have them trained to be able to update based on their frequency for their KPI.
Okay. One last one. How did we measure like what the right indicators were, what the right KPIs were to make the assessments that were chosen here?
Did you want to talk about that, Stephanie, or?
Yes, sure. So we've made it's been a rather long process. So we took it would have been great to have the strategic plan which guides the council's priorities, because really everything that you do should align with your strategy. Your strategy is created to talk about what the end result is at some point in the future. Council's priorities looks 5 years out. Well, in this case, 5 years out because of the length of the term, and our 10-year strategic plan obviously is 10 years. Because it was a little done in the reverse order, we selected council's priorities as their starting point for building the performance management system and dashboard. We'd engaged EY to come in and support us just due to resourcing, and we worked with the entire senior leadership team and key members from each of their areas for each of the 23 objectives in council's priorities. The goal was to identify at least one KPI. Based on the professional advice of EY, they felt that 23 KPIs on high level strategy might be a lot. So we did an exercise with the senior leadership team to determine of the 23 which were the most important to focus on. So we would have used criteria knowing that the strategic plan was well on its way. So what was the strategic plan telling us where to focus? So you'll see some of the KPIs that are related to active transportation. You'll see related to the housing plan and where we're at with the housing plan, and eventually that'll be broadened out to have even more detail to get even down to the level of how many affordable housing units are being created, because it's the ultimate result that you want to get. So we're working at it away in a very phased and measured approach, but it was really looking at what was the strategy we had, also recognizing what data do we have, and if we don't have the data, we might have to build that process and wait a little bit. But with data that was accessible today, that was another factor that we would have used. So data, what was the strategy, and what was the priority that we felt we needed to communicate as a senior leadership team out to the public.
Great, thanks very much, Stephanie.
Your worship, over to you. You're on. Yeah, you go.
Sorry. Stephanie answered my question, but I did want to say I really love this. It's a great communication tool, and it's really wonderful for the public to really get an idea of not only where we're going with our vision, but where we are along that whole spectrum. So fantastic. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Your Worship. Councillor Radman?
Thank you, Chair. This is one of my favorites. I was so excited to see the dashboard. I think it's great. My only question is, and I didn't see it in here, but it might have been, when do we think that it'll be totally finished? I just can't wait to share it out.
So the goal is to share it publicly. It'll be a soft launch, just because you know, when you put something out technologically, you always want to give yourself a little bit of user experience to determine if there's anything that we need to tweak. But the anticipation, you know, would be in early July that we should have not only, you know, one of our constraints is that not constraint, but one of our requirements is to have it in both official languages. So we wanted to present it to you first to make sure that we had this much excitement to actually move forward with the translation and then build the mobile site. So that means that if you're on your phone, it actually changes shape so that everything fits on your screen. And so that's going to take about a month because there is a lot of information when you get the opportunity to actually go through the dashboard. So it'll take about a month to do that. That's what I've set as a target for them, and they're up for the challenge. You know, Evelyn has thanked Eve and his team in GIS, and so, you know, they've done a fantastic job of learning how to use a new tool and leveraging what we have, and to Mark and Gordon and the rest of the organization to make sure that that information is there. So that's the plan, and we're committed to sticking to that to get it out. Building on that, though, will be at a pace. More measures will come as we go through the next quarter, next couple of quarters on the measures team. So we'll see maybe a few more come the new year, and it will continue to build as we create that repository. And we're using it to actually measure the performance and asking the questions like, what is this data telling me, and what do I need to do?
Just curious too, Stephanie, I'm just wondering, does the system automatically translate it, or will you need to physically do that every time you're making a change?
That is a physical change that you would have to make. If you make a change in one spot, you have to make it a change in all three spots. One of the areas where that won't be required, I'm sure, and Eve may have to correct me, but once you have the data, you wouldn't have to necessarily go and do data in 3 different places. It's all tied to the same table. But if you're changing a lot of text, that would have to be changed and translated manually.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, committee. This is a receive for information. So if I could have a motion to receive for information, Councillor Rudd and Councillor Hickey, all in favor. Everybody's hands are already still up. Contrary minded, carried. Thanks very much. That is exciting. Looking forward to the soft launch and then it going live. Moving on to item 6.2, public engagement for the 2024 general operating budget. CFO Fudge, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As Finance Committee is aware, public engagement is a budgeting best practice. And as is discussed in past committee meetings, we intend to conduct public engagement to inform the development of the 2024 general operating budget. Using the Shape Your City platform that will be branded as Shape Your Budget, as well as through in-person facilitated sessions with support from a consultant. Finance has collaborated with Corporate Performance and Strategic Communications to bring forward a plan today to be presented to you by our financial controller, Craig Levine, and we are seeking endorsement through resolution from the Finance Committee before finalizing and moving forward this summer with the engagement. So with that as a backdrop, I'll turn it over to Mr. Levine to go through the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, CFO Fudge. To the members of the Finance Committee, I'm pleased to provide an overview of the public engagement that will be undertaken as part of the 2024 operating budget. Public engagement is a common practice among municipalities. It creates an open and transparent budgeting process for the members of the public. A proposed engagement strategy will involve our proposed engagement strategy will involve a combination of online engagement, to be known as Shape Your Budget, 3 in-person focus groups, 2 will be done by invitation and 1 by registration that will be coordinated with the Chapman Group. And lastly, ensuring that paper copies are available for anyone without access to a computer. The Shape Your Budget landing page is probably about 90% complete. This page will include various documents that will guide the budgeting process, such as the strategic plan, long-term financial plan, and the 2023 operating budget as examples. There will be survey questions that is included in your package tonight, as well as various dates on the webpage around budget presentations, as well as approval dates. And lastly, ensuring quality and control is in place, like confirming postal codes. The next 2 slides are the list of questions that will be included on the Shape Your Budget and at the in-person sessions. I'm not going to go through each of these, but they are in the appendix package provided, as well as the list of potential responses. However, I do want to highlight that the last question that will be included will provide the participant with the opportunity to provide additional comments and suggestions. As I stated earlier, the Chapman Group is engaged to facilitate the in-person sessions. We still need to finalize the timelines, the group invites, location, material, etc. The Chapman Group will then review and disseminate responses, identify key priorities from the results, include a summary of the attendance and discussions and findings from each session, and then they will prepare a final report. So, in conclusion, public engagements are important for all members of the community. It can allow for a better understanding of the community's needs and aspirations. It increases transparency and can create a greater sense of community ownership, as well as often providing diverse perspectives. And with that, it is recommended that the Finance Committee endorse the action plan related to the 2024 operating budget public engagement and direct any questions to staff.
Thanks very much. Questions from the committee, Councillor Radwin?
Thank you, Chair. So I think this is first of all, a great example of staff coming back with some changes that they're making based on conversation that we had during budget discussion. Very progressive too. I just had a food for thought kind of comment that I'd like to make. Sometimes when we have these public engagement sessions, representatives of different groups will come that often get pockets of money, whether it be from community grants or developers or what have you, right? My suggestion is to, if those groups are going to be reached out to, that they send somebody that's not their staff. I understand trying to reach out to different groups to have diversity. But I think it's really important for us to get members of the public that don't really have, we'll say, skin in the game to try to drive our budget direction. So that's just kind of food for thought. I could give an example. One of the groups that I often go to a lot would be the Multicultural Newcomer Center. And so, for example, and Mohammed Baghdad's fabulous, but I think it's best for him to maybe send a newcomer that uses their services rather than him or any of his staff going. So that's just one example I'll throw out there because I do a lot of work with them and I have for years. But, just as one example, because you want to hear from, for example, if there's a new Ukrainian in the city and they're not able to get language assistance and they're not able to get help with settlement in different areas, you want them to be able to say that this is where I'm seeing the problems are, not the staff. You want to be able to get it from the people that are using their services. So just food for thought on that. I'd love to see as part of the consulting with the Chapman Group.
Thanks, Councillor Radwin, for that feedback. Your Worship, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really love this because not only do you have the questions, but you have a list of 17 answers for them. So it really reinforces a lot of what we do with those 17 options of what your top 5 spending priorities, what are your your lowest 5 spending priorities. So I love that the information is provided too, so that you can think about those. That's what makes it difficult. It's when you see the whole scope and try to pick it out of it. It's great for me to say I like A, B, C, or D, but when I see the whole scope, I say, well, you know, I do use this or I don't use that, or, you know, I know my neighbor needs this. So I love this. I think it's a great educational tool, and I think it'll give us some great feedback. So kudos again to the team. They always do a great job. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic tool, and you know, sharing some wisdom I've learned along the way. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority, and having to make a decision, because the other piece is, you know, at the end of the day, the priorities isn't what's listed on the wall. Priorities is where you put your money. So I think this feeds in very well to the process that we do, and it's as Councillor Radwin said, it's one more step to getting even better at the process that we do. So the requested motion is recommended that the Finance Committee endorse the action plan related to the 2024 operating budget public engagement. Councillor Radwin is in there first, and Your Worship's in there second. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor signify aye or raise your hand. Motion carried. Yeah, another good one. That takes us to item 6.3. Item 6.3 is the Parks Capital Budget Recommendation. And we have joining us Mr. Hugenholtz. So welcome to Finance Committee. Over to you.
Good evening, Chair Sullivan and members of committee. As you know, the capital budgets include an amount in there for parks asset renewal in both 2023 and 2024. We're pleased to be before you this evening with details of the specific investments planned for that amount. So I'm going to turn it over shortly to Director Dion to sort of walk you through the details of what's planned. But before I do that, I guess I do want to just caution that because of many years of underinvestment in parks, there is a lot of infrastructure that needs renewal, and you can see that when you're out and about. So certainly in future years, we'll seek your support for continued investments into our parks and playgrounds. But with that, we are very happy to have a full, lengthy list of investments that I think are going to make a significant impact for our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Dion to walk you through the details.
Thank you, Commissioner Hugenholtz, and welcome Finance Committee. Can't tell you how excited I am here to be here tonight to talk about our Parks Asset Renewal Program. Before I get started, I do want to offer a sincere thank you to Barb Crawford, who is on the line with us here tonight, who did a lot of job on this report, and I just want to express my thanks to her. So the first part, I'm just going to read my request to make sure it's documented well, but so the request is that the Finance Committee approve the list of proposed projects to be funded by the Parks Asset Renewal Plan as part of the approved general fund for the 2023 and 2024 capital budgets. Just as a bit of a refresher, I do want to talk about all the items. I'll do that towards the end, but I want to give us a bit of history of where we are today and how we got there. So when this budget was submitted for 2023 and 2024, we really just put forward a lump sum of money. And when the budget was approved, part of the requirement was that we come back here to Finance Committee with a list of items with more details so you can make a decision on those. And that's why we're here today. Also, as a bit of background knowledge, we had $900,000 invested for 2023 and $600,000 available to us in 2024. In 2023, we did slice off a portion of that, $200,000 worth, 5 growth committee initiatives, and I'll just quickly go over them, but won't go into details about them. But they're the community block party trailer, the cricket field, an all-terrain off-road wheelchair for Rockwood Park, the disc golf course, and Passport to Parks. So all great initiatives and all close to being implemented. What you don't know here is that now that we have $1.6 million available, $1.3 million available to us now, we actually put a list together that totals about $1.6 million. And that was done strategically. We wanted to have a very comprehensive list available to work through it and get to that limit. We didn't want to have to come back to Finance Committee, say later in the fall, with a secondary list and get your approval. So just want to point out that this is a very extensive list that was supposed to be encompassed over 2 years, but we're going to put our best foot forward and try and get this all done, or at least most of it, in 2023. As Commissioner Hugenholtz did mention, the infrastructure is in poor shape, and although this is an extensive list, there's many more things that we could do. So we do look for your continued support in years forward. Some of the guiding principles that we did when we came up with this list that we followed, one were PlaySJ, which is really the guiding document when it comes to the parks and recreational facilities. And under the PlaySJ umbrella, we looked at a few items. We looked at right-sizing our parks and playgrounds, which is what we've been doing for the last number of years, especially our neighborhood parks. We had a focus on our district and regional parks and playgrounds, and we've been doing that. And we wanted to focus on quality over quantity. The other thing we wanted to look at was council priorities, and we believe that these items align with grow, belong, and move very well. And we wanted to make sure that we adhered to the capital budget policy. And I'm sure everyone knows it, and it would be nice to have all new shiny items here. But part of the capital budget policy says that 85% is referred for renewal and reinvestment, and the 15% is for new items. So we think we've done a really good balancing act here at fulfilling that. So, as Commissioner Hugenholtz kind of alluded to earlier, over the past several years, perhaps even decades, all we've really done in terms of investment is enough for basic maintenance. Really nothing more about that. The improvements of the playgrounds and parks, it promotes healthy and active living, improves accessibility, improves social interaction, improves quality of life, and it also creates a sense of community. And these are all things that we want to help St. John to continue to grow. What I'd like to do now, just take a brief pause there for a second, but I do want to talk about the projects that we have lined up and give you some details about those. And Your Worship, maybe I'll answer your question first before I get into the projects and talk about all the good things that are going to happen.
Mark, all I want to do is move the recommendation because I love the 50 garbage cans on it.
Thank you. So I would like to quickly go through the different items that we have here. And Councillor Radlon, I don't know if you want to ask a question now or if maybe we can pause them till the end.
I can wait.
Perfect. So number one, the Carleton Community Center. Earlier this year, we had to take down I'll call it a platform at the Community Carleton Center. It had an accessible ramp to it. It tied everything together at the playground. It was in deplorable shape. It was a wooden structure held together with pieces of plywood. There was nails sticking out. It just got to a point where it was so degraded that we had to take it out for safety issues. So that's really our number one priority to have this restored. Item number two is in conjunction with that and just next door, but is the splash pad. We had a piece of our equipment that one of our water features that was damaged there to a point that we just couldn't repair it. So again, a highly used area, something that the kids love, and we want to get this back and running. And that'll help complete that entire Marketplace West corridor that we're working on right now. although this doesn't sound exciting, batteries. Lily Lake, around the lake, there is a walking trail. And typically it is lit by solar lights that batteries are used to store the energy. These batteries right now are 8 to 9 years old. They've lost their efficiency. They're no longer valid. We get a lot of requests, especially later in the year, in the fall and the summer, when the days are shorter, that people tend to be a little bit nervous when the lights aren't there anymore. So this is another great thing that we can do, a really quite an easy fix, and we can make it happen fairly soon. At Rockwood Park, we have 4 picnic shelters that we want to replace. Again, old wooden structures, beat up. What we want to do is we're probably going to put in some sort of prefab type thing, not made out of wood, something that'll last and, require much less maintenance down the road. Again, a pretty easy fix, but something that is used extensively. Bleachers at Memorial Park. For those of you that don't know, this is our most used ball field and used by the St. John Alpines. These bleachers right now are a combination of a wood and a metal structure. They're both deteriorated to a point that they're not comfortable and probably not safe. And I'd go as far as mentioning is that they're not even at code. So this is something that we really want to get replaced as soon as possible too. Your worship, these next two are really related for you, but replacements of garbage cans and benches throughout the city and in different parks. It doesn't sound like much, but again, we want to get rid of wood structures, anything like that, something that we can put in as more permanent and consistent across the whole city. They'll offer as a piece of background, especially on the garbage cans. We do want to get something with a top on them. What happens is they fill with water, they freeze in the wintertime, and really right now in most places we have blue 55-gallon drums around with a garbage bag in it. Doesn't look professional. And when these things happen, we end up removing the garbage can. It makes it difficult for the public to use these items. So it doesn't seem like a big ticket item, but it's something we should invest in, and it'll be noticeable throughout the community. Tennis courts. Who doesn't like to play a good game of tennis? So over by the Peter Murray Arena, we have 3 tennis courts there. The underground structure of the tennis courts is in pretty good shape. So we feel that here we can really take off the top layer of asphalt and resurface it, get it painted, and get this area active again. We have a dog park next door to it that's being heavily used. And we want to get people back and using these tennis courts. Circle back to Memorial Field. For those of you that don't know, there's actually multiple components to it. There's a hardball field where the big set of bleachers are. And then there's also a couple of softball fields there. The dugouts that are there today are, again, just, wooden structures in very rough shape. They're also set in the ground such that when it rains, there's water that sits in there. So you can imagine as a player sitting in there and having your feet sitting in puddles. It's just something that we want to get corrected and fixed. Repairs to the skate park by TD Station. Again, some of this is minor stuff, fixing cracks in the concrete, fixing some railings, things like that. But one of the biggest things that we want to do here is I'll say put in a platform on one side of the half pipe. And that's going to enable all the skateboard artists and cyclists that use the area to do tricks without a sense of falling and getting hurt. The way they're designed today, they can basically go up the ramp, turn around, and go back down. Sometimes they want to do flips, tricks, whatever they do there. And we get a lot of requests from the park. And as everyone can see on a daily basis, heavily used. So this, again, is another item that we want to fix right away. Fencing around the Forest Hills Maintenance Building. The way this particular one is laid out right now is really just to do some minor repairs in it, fix doors, some holes in the fence, put in a couple new pieces where we need it. That said, going forward, this is probably something that we want to look at a little more extensively. The fence is old, it's rusted, it's in a heavily populated area, and I think what we'd like to do, being a good neighbor, I'll say, is get a new fence in there, probably put some sort of sheathing or whatever to hide the building, just make it much more attractive for all the neighbors in the area. But we don't have that planned for this year. Beach volleyball court. Fundy Key is a great investment in moving forward, but one of the things with Fundy Key is we lost the volleyball court that used to be there. So in our opinion, this is really still the replacement or refurbishment of something that we've already had. As we can imagine, we're obviously not going to put it back on the Fundy Key site. That has a lot of beautiful things going there. They don't need a volleyball court, but we have the perfect opportunity here to put a volleyball court over at Little River Reservoir. Again, probably our second most used beach in the area. We get a lot of requests for this. There's people that want to have tournaments, that type of thing. So we'd like to get that reinstated, but just putting it in a new location. In King Square, at the top of King Street, we have some beautiful granite stairs there. And I don't know if you can see in your kit, but there are some pictures there. But if you can envision it, they've tilted over time. The frost has gotten a hold of them. There's some lips there that make it challenging for walking. So what we'd like to do, again, highly used area, we want to make it safe and make it attractive and restore it to its original condition. Replacement of some fences down at Lower Shamrock Park. There's just a couple pieces that are broken there that we want to replace. We'll probably also add a protective cover maybe on the top of the fence. This is really useful for spectators that go to the game. It just gives them a place to lean, makes it a lot more comfortable. And it also protects the players using the field if at times they're reaching for a fly ball that's about to go out of bounds, and instead of hitting the fence, they hit this protective top on the fence. This next one is actually quite exciting and goes against not against the Plan SJ, but it goes against what we've done with neighborhood parks. Ellerdale Street Playground. This is a neighborhood park, but in Play SJ, it was noted that given the traffic volume that is here, the density of the population, the lack of other things around, that there should be an exception made for the Ellerdale Playground. It has gotten in rough shape over the years, and what we want to do is just really restore that to its former glory. Quite excited about that one. Resurfacing of some basketball courts. The city has 11 of them. And so what we'd like to do is some basketball courts need resurfacing. Some need new nets, lights, poles. Some need it all. What we'd like to do here is we'll evaluate these one-on-one and do whatever is required at the basketball courts. I just want to note here for a second, I bring that up because there is a tender out there today for three particular areas, and I'm just going to try and make a note here for a second. Anyways, there's a tender out there today. I've lost my notes here for a second. For the stairs at Smythe Street, the Bentley Street Pavilion, and the Robertson Square tender. So this is hot off the press today. Those have come in significantly over budget to the tune of almost $200,000. So the reason I bring this up now is I think it's relevant with respect to the basketball courts. I think we can do something maybe a little different on some of the courts and recoup some of this money or divert it to possibly fund these tenders that are out now that came in so far over budget. I just think that's an important part to note here. The dog park, again, over by the Peter Murray Arena, we put a lot of investment into this last year, getting the park up and running. for those of you that don't know, Irving was also involved with this. They donated some money, did a little refurbishment there. Their whole area is beautiful, brand new fence. So what we'd like to do here is actually replace the fence here, make it all new, fresh, because it's an area that is getting a ton of usage today. So we want to just get that up to speed too. A bit of a small one here, but repairs to the pickleball fence at Forest Hills. Again, nothing major, just fixing a few holes, making the fences secure to the ground well. Nothing major going on there. And last but not least is the maintenance work at the Rainbow Park Community Garden. So we just want to refresh that, bring it up. Certainly here at my office at Adelaide, I see people using it every day, and we just want to bring that up to proper standards. That concludes my presentation tonight. And if there's any questions, I'll open it up to the floor.
Thanks, Commissioner Dion. Mayor Reardon, over to you.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just really want to say I find this very exciting. I mean, it's not a gigantic amount of money, but the facelift that all of these little, amenities that we'll get within the community, and it spans over the whole community, will be really great for interactive with the city, with the face of the city. So I think it's really wonderful, and I'm really happy to see it. And I like the little, extra consideration that you gave for Ellerdale Place, the playground. I think that's important as well. So really appreciate your work on this, Mark. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Worship.
I'm moving, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take your motion on the recommendation. Councillor Hickey is giving the V for victory. He's seconding. Councillor Radwin, you have a question or comment?
Thank you. I have a quick couple of comments and then another question. So with the skateboard park, I've had so many complaints about the safety. So it sounds like there's going to be a nice little, I don't know if you're hearing background noise. Sorry. Are you getting background noise from me? Okay, perfect.
I'm good.
All right. So I think this will make it much safer to skateboard at the park. Am I understanding correctly?
So yes, Councillor Radwan, 100%. There's cracks in the surfaces. There's some of the pipes that are rusted that maybe need a little TLC, but we want to get all those fixed and get it up and running just to make it a safer environment. And we also want to add in that platform on the half pipes to make it more enjoyable for everyone using the park.
That's what I've had calls on because I'm not a skateboarder, but it's my understanding the very, very narrow sides make it very difficult for when people are trying to flip. So I think this is great. I've had numerous calls, so that's wonderful. I've also had tons of calls on garbage cans, which I haven't called your office on or anything, but it's great to see those getting redone. And really exciting to have that volleyball court sent over to the res, because I've seen a lot of online comments about us losing it. So this is great. Lakewood Heights, Loch Lomond, they're going to be thrilled, and it is busy. The res is very busy, so it's a great place to have it. I did have a question. I mean, you would be overseeing the Jarvis Bay Memorial Park as well, right?
We do take care of that area, yes.
Because I have had conversation. There is, and I'm just food for thought. I know there's a little strip of pavement that really, it's very narrow and it's not making it very accessible out there, that goes right from the stairs to another area that does look like it's totally paved. So I've been asked about that, but to me that was an operational thing. Just food for thought that there are some people hoping that there's a little more paving that happens out there. And the only other question that I had is, do you have a wish list? So the reason why I ask is I don't know how many businesses or people might contact the city and say, look, I want to donate something in memory of my grandmother or something. Do we have a wish list if somebody wants to make a donation?
So today, maybe just to go back to your first comment about Jarvis Bay Memorial,
Sure.
I think I'll just make a larger general comment. we came up with a list from involvement from the community, like you're hearing it. We're hearing it too. We talked to, operations managers. We talked to our supervisors, who to me were so excited hearing that we're going to do some reinvestment here. And this was a list we felt we could give us our best bang for the buck. So, there's so many more things that we need to do that, Commissioner Hugenholtz alluded to earlier. So we're going to keep on pounding away at these things and get as many things done as we can. It will take time because we haven't done a lot of investment over the years. So that's just a broader sense of where we are. In terms of a wish list, so we do have a lot of people that make donations of benches, typically put them around lakes or some area that has some significance to that individual. We do maintain that. It's actually done through a different group, but we do that, and we do maintain those things when they're given to us.
Okay. The only other food for thought that I had was I don't know what municipality it is, but they have their wish list online. I forget, when I was nosing around different cities, they actually have a wish list online. I don't know if it's something that would be valuable, but just food for thought. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Radman. I will add, this is exciting, on several fronts. One, it probably isn't typical, or hasn't been, and I'm glad it is becoming typical, that we get a list of really items that are this small and a list that is this long. But these items probably touch more St. Johners, than some of the big things that we do. And it's a function of a couple of very important things that this council and council in the past have put together. Play SJ. I mean, gosh, when Play SJ came in, I remember the biggest concern was right sizing what we have. And we kept saying, well, one of the reasons we need to right size is we had so much infrastructure, we couldn't maintain what we had. If we get to the right size, then we can start to invest to maintain and have higher quality of the infrastructure that we have. And certainly this is a great example of that. And the other piece is our capital policy, where 85% is renewal and looking after what we have, and 15% is new. I'm as excited about repaving or resurfacing of tennis courts and basketball courts as I would be if we were making something new. Like, the neighborhoods and the residents that enjoy these things are going to be over the moon when they come in and see that they've been painted or improved, or the fences have been fixed. This is all fantastic. So I don't have any questions at all. I'm just excited and happy that it's here. So thank you, Commissioner Dion, and for bringing it forward. We've got the motion on the floor. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Thanks very much. That's 6.3. 6.4, the General Fund Long-Term Financial Plan, CFO Fudge.
Thanks again, Chairman Sullivan, members of the Finance Committee. I will be brief this afternoon, given you have been provided, actually we've been provided direction over the last 6 months from this committee, and that you've been intricately involved in producing a long-term financial plan that's included in your packet this afternoon. If the Finance Committee approves the plan today, we will coordinate through the chair to make a detailed presentation to Common Council when the recommendation is brought forward. We are pleased to recommend to the Finance Committee a plan to be brought forward to Council that is updated, that reflects current strategic, economic, and financial landscape today. Once again, the 10-year plan will provide Council a base case and a stretch case scenario. Both scenarios will have a primary focus on funding the objectives set forth in the city's 10-year strategic plan. The financial plan is governed by 3 guiding principles of sustainability, flexibility, and reducing vulnerabilities. And those principles are accomplished through the establishment of best practice financial policies and a robust performance reporting and measurement structure, and that's contained in the report. The 10-year plan is achieving results for taxpayers. Since the implementation of the long-term financial plan, significant debt has been retired, the tax rate has been significantly reduced, and St. John no longer has the privilege of saying it has the highest tax rate in the province. Debt per capita is significantly lower, the debt service ratio is significantly lower, assessment-based growth is up, and we have a balanced capital investment approach that provides for targeted new infrastructure investment while ensuring we continue to tackle the city's aging infrastructure and infrastructure deficit, which is also rapidly declining. We are looking beyond financial sustainability and are now laser focused on financial excellence. The plan before you, in my opinion, achieves that, and if the city is able to achieve the stretch assumptions in the model, we would be looking at significant increase in funding to accelerate achieving the strategic plan objectives in less than 10 years. We could be eyeing a tax rate of $1.36 and a record low in debt level and record high in flexibility. As I mentioned, a detailed presentation will be made to council to expose them to the detailed assumptions in the plan. And I'd like to acknowledge the work of Craig Levine, our controller, financial controller, who led this work with support from our communications department on the production of the document that's put together. We will have professionally printed copies to provide each of you after the plan is approved by Common Council. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions the Finance Committee may have.
Thanks, CFO Fudge. Any questions on the long-term financial plan update? Councillor Redmond.
Chair, I don't have any questions. It looks fantastic. I really wanted to thank Chair, yourself, Mayor Reardon, and the previous council, because at the FCM this year, when somebody said that the city of St. John doesn't have its finances in order, I was able to say we sure do. Things have changed. That might have been a conversation in the past. It's no longer a conversation in this city. So, and it's because of this sort of plan that, and sticking to it, and getting rid of a $10 million deficit that you guys did, that I'm able to make those comments and make them really bold. I was very offended for somebody to say something like that, because it is no longer. And the two new policy statements I love, actually, I got to mention. So the budget monitoring policy, the tagline for that is keep track of your money, very important. And the ABC policy, make sure your dependent is achieving results at university. I loved it. Totally creative. These sort of things are fun to be able to keep these things in our mind going forward. So anyway, hats off to staff. Thank you to the previous council. Thank you to our council for keeping us on track. I mean, we're shining bright here in the city.
Thanks, Councillor Redmond. You're right. Being strategic is so important, and wouldn't be remiss to add former Chair David Merrithew, who really was the lead, and along with our finance folks, brought us along to get us to this point. So yes, thanks for that shed of Councillor Redmond, and we'll share it with Councillor Merrithew. Councillor Hickey, to you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Really just a mention for me, obviously kudos around to our team and to sticking to the plan that we had put in place a few years ago now, and have been able to yield some results as such, and really look forward to real results paying off faster. You can see, with estimates into 2032, having well over $6 million in strategic initiatives within our operating budget is pretty exciting. That's adding an extra zero to what we have now. So you can see the vision for what's in store for St. John is certainly presented through this, and I think that's what's particularly exciting for me. I think it's important too for me. What I noticed in this is the establishment of flexibility. My tenure on council has not been met with any flexibility from a financial perspective, which I think was important for the time and met the occasion well. we needed to be strict around our finances, and we needed to make sure that that was held within our plan. Incorporating flexibility allows us to make sure that we're responding to certain issues as they come up, certain infrastructure requirements as they come up, whatever that may be. Building that in is really important. And I think it's exciting to be able to get to a position now where we have the capacity and ability to do that. So those are my comments. And certainly a kudos to our senior leaders in the organization who have been making this happen and putting the plan that this council and team came up with into action and making sure it worked.
Thanks, Councillor. Your Worship.
Thank you. I love it, and I'm going to move the recommendation. And I want the CFO to know that don't spend more money than you make, save your money for a rainy day, and, you know, fix your roof before you buy new living room furniture goes through my head constantly. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night hearing those things over and over again because he's drilled them into us for so long. It's all good. So, yes, I am fully recommending it, moving the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Yeah, anything I say at this point to be redundant. Yeah, it's great. And well, I guess I will say, you know, we've had many plans, and the success right now is, I mentioned the last one, working plan SJ, now working the long-term financial plan, including the fact that our long-term financial plan says to review the long-term financial plan and keep it updated. That is all good. Now we got to work the plan. So, yeah. On the question, all in favor, signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Fantastic work. Thanks to the team. Look forward to bringing it to council. Item 6.5, our procurement policy and protocols, CFO Fudge.
Thanks again. I'm equally proud of what is put before you this evening on this matter of procurement policy and protocols. The modernization of our procurement policy and introduction of new protocols is a priority on the council approved work plan. And we're actioning some of the recommendations from the Ernst & Young operational audit and it reflects the strategic objectives of Common Council. The policy is a legacy document that will bring significant change to your council kits and increase efficiencies at City Hall while adding the necessary governance to support strategic procurement. This initiative is co-sponsored by myself as well as Melanie Tompkins, General Counsel, and was led by our Director of Finance, Jody Forgy, and our Procurement Manager, Chris Roberts, with significant support from in General Counsel, Orlando Lineros, who also led the development of the Delegation of Authority bylaw that's in the kit, and as well as receiving advice from trusted and very respected industry experts in procurement law in Paul Manueli's office, as well as a recognized guru in social procurement expert, Larry Berglund. So the recommendation this evening is threefold. First, the recommendation is that the Finance Committee approve sending Common Council the strategic procurement policy. Second, bring forward to Council the first and second reading for the Delegation of Authority bylaw. Third, receive and file 3 protocols that we will go through in the presentation. And I don't want to steal any detail of the presentation, so I'll stop here and introduce Director of Finance, Jody Forgy, who will present the details in our recommendations, as well as update the Finance Committee on the results of the vendor outreach sessions that she conducted to obtain community feedback on the social procurement protocol. So with that, over to Ms. Forgy. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO Fudge. Good afternoon, Chair Sullivan and members of Finance Committee. I'll go real quick because I know most of this you have heard before. There's only a couple of new items in here. And like CFO mentioned, we've got Chris Roberts on the line too, Orlando and Melanie as well supporting us. So we have the whole team here with us today. Just going to quickly pull up the presentation. There we go. Okay, so as we have gone through the development of our policy, which is included in your Finance Committee kit tonight, there's no changes to the policy from the last time you saw it, so nothing to identify there. In the right-hand side of this, you see all of the key changes that we've gone through with you through this process. And the ones that we'll speak a bit about tonight is where we required a bylaw for the awarding of contracts. And then within our protocols, we added a contract management supplier performance protocol to the kit, as well as the updated social protocol. But the rest of the information of the key changes in the policy you've seen. Keeping in mind throughout this entire project, we were looking at where can we reduce red tape, where can we mitigate risk, and then be more strategic in our procurement practices. This was brought to our attention both from the operational audit and just our awareness of it when we went through to update our policy. Social procurement has been a significant step forward for the city, and it did come with many challenges for our team. The biggest challenge was really there isn't a lot of history in this area for us to depend on. And even in the past year, we have seen many changes in how social procurement can be structured within a municipality. We have been working very closely with GCO and with legal consultants to review our proposed protocols and to determine what we could do in this area. Throughout the process, we kept true to our goals of being strategic, reducing the red tape, and mitigating risks. So we have spoken before about the importance of engaging our social procurement with our potential suppliers and the taxpayers. The opportunity to receive full community benefit cannot be done by the city alone. I really want to emphasize that because it takes a continued partnership with our vendor community in order to participate in our social protocol requirements and to inform us of barriers or opportunities to enhance our ability to achieve the community benefits from the social procurement. Like if you think about it, we can set up all the steps in place, but if no one signs up for it, it really doesn't work out in our favor for the community benefit. We conducted 2 sessions where we invited interested vendors in to learn more about the draft protocols and to provide us with feedback. We had a really good turnout. We had approximately 25 vendors attend, and they were engaged in the sessions. Chair Sullivan attended and he provided the opening comments and also listened to the feedback we received. And from those sessions and additional input from the GCO with our legal consultants, we have revised the protocols. So we now, moving forward, if you recall, we had 2 in the past. We now have 1 condensed protocol. The protocol is still similar to the first one, the social value supplier roster. And it's very similar to what we originally drafted, with the exception we have included the requirement that the business must have an address in the city of St. John. In addition, we have removed the calculation for proposals based on feedback from our legal consultant and have instead determined that we would invite all suppliers from the roster if there were at least 3 available to bid. Again, the requirement to be below the regulation threshold still exists, and anything above will still go to open competitive bidding, and the protocol will not be used. So the team is very much ready to go forward and very excited with implementing the changes, but there's a couple more steps we have to take before we move forward. Our plan is go to council after this meeting with the approval of the policy. But in addition to that, as mentioned, Orlando Linares and our GCO really did a lot of work on creating a bylaw for us for the contract award and execution. I can't stress enough how much value that's going to add to us. Council's going to see value from it, suppliers, and within the organization itself. We'll now be able to essentially take our contracts that are within our policy limits, spending authority limits, and bring them and have the mayor sign with that delegation of authority. So that bylaw is included for approval. And then also, our next step will be to quickly move to getting the questionnaire out to any suppliers that want to sign up on the roster. That was some of the feedback we received, was worry about what if I'm not on the roster on time. So we want to give the summer to build it before we actually implement that protocol, which we plan to do in September. We will be finalizing the procurement procedures manual over the month of June. I can say that Chris Roberts has been working on that this whole time, keeping it up to date and getting it ready to roll out. The training to staff will happen throughout the summer with the goal to be fully implemented in September. So you'll start seeing the changes throughout the summer, and the expectation is everything will be done by September. And CFO Fudge already indicated what the recommendations are, so I won't repeat them. But at this time, I just thank you for your time and listening to us as we've gone through this project. I know we've presented in front of you many times, but it's been really important for us just to make sure you're on side with the significant changes we're making. And the team is here, so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Forgy. Councillor Hickey, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Jody, for the presentation. I've always been, as you guys I think know by now, I've always been excited for this one. This weekend, I was reminded why when we were at FCM. Municipalities increasingly are getting downloaded more and more issues with only 7 cents on tax dollars in order to spend on them. So we no longer have the luxury of single, one-dimensional problem solving, which this really deals with a lot of that for me. Not only are we just making sure that we have a procurement policy, we're making sure that our procurement policy supports diversity in our community, making sure it has a social impact. We're making sure it's supporting livable wages amongst an increased cost of living. Right? Like all those things are going to better impact our community. They're going to make it so that more people can afford to live here and have better employers too. So I really like that it's solving so many extra problems along with supporting a really good procurement policy. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm confident in the changes and confident that the team's putting our best foot forward on this one. So I'll also move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Radman. Councillor Radman or Your Worship, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Your Worship.
I have a quick comment. I want to thank the staff. I think Councillor Hickey's covered a lot of it, but when you read through this, the policy is like 40 pages long, so it's very comprehensive. And I really appreciate all the amount of work that would have had to go into this, because it is, it's not just straightforward. It's going to go across many sectors of environmental, etc. For procurement. So we're going to look at a variety of things, not just the dollar anymore. So which makes it a little more complex. So I really do appreciate staff bringing this forward. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Your Worship. Councillor Radman.
Yeah, just briefly, I had, before I went to the FCM, chatted with Director Forgy, and she mentioned that this would be a good thing for me to kind of find out about what are other people doing. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have updated policies, and they're hoping to revamp theirs as well. Toronto has a very good in-depth one, but other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of great feedback on, oh yes, we've got this great social procurement policy from what I got from other municipalities. So I think we're ahead of the game on this one. So great job to staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Gosh, first of all, Director Forgy mentioned I sat in on the 2 public sessions with regards to the consultation around social procurement. Fantastic job done by our staff. Director Forgy, certainly our procurement staff, Chris was there. We also had support from legal who were involved. And we had folks join us interested in this, from the locals in St. John to a consulting firm from Vancouver who was just interested in what was going on in the East Coast and looking for information, and was very helpful. So this is our staff being on leading edge. And I won't pile on the social procurement policy. I think that's been done well by the rest of the committee. But there's some other stuff in here that's going to change council for the better. Like this invested time that finance committee has taken, staff has taken to update to a modern procurement policy means that we won't have a consent agenda full of little things with deep contracts that we don't understand and really should have no business in approving because we don't know the contractual language. That's what we have staff for. Staff will have time to do more things that we would like them to do in less time, and having to prepare a report for council when it's something that they have the authority to approve. Something we've started doing the past few years is getting our capital budget done earlier so that we can take advantage of pricing and more flexibility. Certainly with staff having authority to spend within limits and not having to wait till things went to council, that gives them all sorts of flexibility and will pay off in the long run. I'm excited that the committee is excited about a procurement policy, but this is really good invested time and effort that's going to help, council. If we're not discussing the small things that staff can look after, it gives us time to spend more time on the bigger things that we want to deal with. This is all good. So thanks to everybody involved. We've got the recommendation on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Thank you, team, for this great work. Looking forward to it going to council and getting put into practice. And that brings us to our 2023 year-end results. CFO Fudge, over to you.
Last item of the evening. Year-end forecast. Mr. Levine, our city controller, will present to the committee the 2023 year-to-date operating results, both for the general fund and for St. John Water. I want to acknowledge these results are as of the end of April, so we're only 4 months in. Early days. However, it's important to do this analysis so there's ample time to adjust if need be to address any foreseen budget challenges. We will hear from Mr. Levine a lot of familiar reasons for some of the variances, such as timing. However, he will also be providing a recommendation along with the receipt and file of the results to the Finance Committee to bring forward to Common Council with one particular item. With that, over to Mr. Levine. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO Fudge, and to members of the committee. The purpose of tonight's presentation, as CFO Fudge alluded to, is to provide a high-level overview of April's year-to-date results for both the general and the utility funds. As Mr. Fudge stated, the majority of the variance you will see from most service areas is a combination of staffing variances as well as timing of expenses incurred versus our budget. The service levels have also commented on whether there has been any unanticipated or unexpected expenditures to date, as well as any anticipated budget pressures to be expected throughout the balance of the year. And staff will be back at another session with year-end projections at the next reporting period. This slide is an overview of revenue and expenditures year to date for the general fund. And as the committee can see, we have around $6.29 million surplus year to date. This slide just breaks down the expenses between our wages and benefits and our goods and services, with wages making up about 30% of the overall variance. Revenues are currently sitting with a surplus of just over $1 million. And the majority of this variance is attributed to short-term interest, which is related to higher than expected interest rates that the city is earning on its cash balances. We are also seeing permit and parking revenues trending better than expected. And if this continues for the next 8 months, we anticipate a positive variance for these revenue streams as well. Growth in community services have an $814,000 positive year-to-date variance. A large portion of the variance is within the regional facilities and is timing related. There are also no material budgeted variances year to date and none expected at this period in time. Public Works and Transportation Services has just over $2.23 million positive variance year to date. The largest variances is with street service, which again is a timing issue. There have been some unexpected expenses to date. However, these will be mitigated within the overall budget throughout the year, along with monitoring some of the budget pressures around our fuel and maintenance costs due to continual increases. One of the risks that has been identified and may impact for year end is with the Transit Commission. Transit Commission is trending towards a $772,000 deficit, and this is based on revenue shortfalls and continued increase in fuel costs. These are projections and certainly subject to change, as well as there may be other funding that may be able to use to offset the costs around some of the transformational changes that has been ongoing. Public safety has a variance of just over $880,000 year to date, with our fire and EMO having a surplus of just over $334,000. And again, there have been no major unanticipated expenditures year to date. However, the cost of equipment, maintenance, and repairs are coming in slightly higher this year and will be monitored throughout the year. St. John Police and PSCC have a positive variance of just over $500,000. A large portion of this is within the wage benefit lines. And again, there is some budget pressures with insurance and legal to date that will have to be mitigated with other budget lines. Utilities and infrastructure has just over a $519,000 positive variance year to date. And again, the majority is related to timing, and there are no major unanticipated expenses year to date and none expected at this point in time. Strategic Services has a surplus of just over $636,000. And again, similar to other areas, some timing differences. And again, no major unanticipated expenditures year to date and none identified for year end at this point in time. Corporate Services, just a minor variance of just over $151,000. And again, very similar stories I just spoke about with Strategic Services. Other charges, just a really minor variance of just over $44,000. Now I'll provide a few highlights for St. John Water that has just over a $1.73 million positive variance to date. Overall revenues for St. John Water has a surplus of just over $300,000. And again, similar to the general fund, the main driver is interest on our cash balances coming higher than what was budgeted. Overall expenditures are coming in with a surplus of just $1.4 million year to date. This slide just really breaks down our wages between the wages and goods and services. Large portion of the variance is timing, such as a $530,000 monthly payment for our water treatment plant that is 1 month behind, some equipment that has not been received to date, as well as coordinating planned construction along with shutdowns with some of our industrial customers. The good news is year to date, there have been no major unexpected expenditures. However, there is a challenge, or there could be a challenge with balancing our planned work along with emergency purchases that can come up with St. John Water, particularly with water main breaks and so forth. So this will need to be continually monitored closely throughout the year. So overall, the first 4 months show a positive variance. However, the majority is timing related. And at this point in time, we do expect to be largely on budget for the year. Apart from the Transit Commission, there has been no major unexpected expenditures year to date. The next report in January to August will include our year-end projections for the Finance Committee. So lastly, as I stated earlier, short-term interest will have a positive impact based on our current rates. As per the operating budget policy, the short-term interest revenue spikes are considered a non-recurring revenue. So staff are recommending to the Finance Committee that any short-term revenue interest earned above the approved budget be directed to the General Fund Capital Reserve per the operating budget policy. And lastly, I would recommend that the Finance Committee approve this presentation and direct any questions to staff. Thank you very much.
Oh, Chair, you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Levine. Councilor Radman, I see your hand. You go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So through you to Director Levine, I'm not sure. I guess that I'm just a little confused. I know that you had mentioned with transit, that there was revenue shortfalls, but I thought that the ridership had gone up and gas price increases. I thought that we had kind of locked in a bunch of money for gas. So anyway, I don't know if you have any information on that, or if maybe we should see if Mr. McKinnon should come in with us, but I'm just trying to get an idea of where are the challenges for them.
Sure, I'll let Commissioner Hugenholtz jump in on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Radwan. Yes, ridership is certainly trending upwards. I think what we see reflected in the revenue shortfall right now is that isn't trending upwards as fast and as quickly as we had originally anticipated or projected. You'll recall we would have set this budget, probably way back in the fall or so of last year. So based on where we stand right now, we are projecting a revenue shortfall. Now that could change over time, but that's what we see right now. And in terms of the fuel, we're partially hedged on our fuel costs over there, not fully. And just based on the prices right now, we are expecting to be overspent on our fuel budget overall at the end of this year.
Okay, with the ridership, I'm just curious, do you have any idea? Because I know that Mr. McKinnon was having a hard time to fill jobs to be able to expand our on-demand service. Do we have any idea if that's kind of part of it? Because I think now he may have the staff, but he didn't for a little bit.
Yeah, that's not a significant factor in what we see here.
Okay.
We did initially have some challenges on the recruiting front, but we were able to work closely with our HR department and communications, and actually did quite a good job of getting the message out there, and we expanded our candidate pool, and I believe right now we have completed all the hiring that was expected. So that isn't really a significant factor so far.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Your Worship, over to you.
Thank you. I'll chime in a little bit on that as well. I went to, while I was at FCM, to one of the transit presentations, and no transit commission across the country is back to their pre-pandemic numbers, not even the Toronto Transit Commission, the TTC. And part of the reason for that is once you figure out how you're going to travel when transit is impacted, if you buy a car, you have that car then. So it's very difficult to rebuild your ridership. It takes some time. We are on the upward trend. We have seen an uptake big time in transit on demand. I think we can probably get there, but it does take some time. It does not happen overnight because for 2 years it's difficult to take a bus. So you buy a vehicle, you arrange to go with your neighbor, you do whatever you have to do to get to work and to get around. So and you've got people working from home as well, as someone pointed out. So it's all of those components that make it a little trickier for transit. But I will move the recommendation while I'm on the voice here. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship, with a seconder from Councillor Radman. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendation, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded and carried. I don't see any other business that has brought us to the close of our agenda. Just a quick 2-second recap for those who may have joined us late. We had great conversation that's going to start greater conversations at council with regards to professional development and events ticket policies. 2 very exciting engagement pieces that are coming forward. Our performance management dashboard, we got our first look, and that's in the works. the shape your budget engagement for budget 2024, a great list of small things that are going to improve our neighborhoods and the parks capital budget, our updated general fund long-term financial plan, and CFO Fudge slid a small bit of information in there in the middle of things that he hadn't mentioned to me before, that we no longer can brag about having the highest tax rate in the province of New Brunswick. And I guess I had my head inside too much in the work we're doing here. Quick pat on the back. We got more work to do. All the stuff we talked about, rigor, sticking to our plan and moving forward. It's nice to know that, this work has been showing promise. So that was an awesome tidbit of news. Looking forward to educating the rest of council on the updates that we have had over the last few meetings in Finance Committee, but bringing that to council for our updated long-term financial plan. The great improvements to the procurement policy, both that will make us more efficient and effective as council, plus the social procurement pieces. Really all good news with a little bit of caution on transit in the early days update for how things are going and our budget monitoring so far this year. So thank you, team, both committee and our extended staff. We have staff from procurement, strategic planning, infrastructure, recreation. Everybody seems to have joined us today. So thank you to everybody for being here. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hickey, you got the hand up first. Councillor Reardon as a backup. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. This Finance Committee meeting is adjourned.